Hello and welcome. I am delighted to see you all here. I am Ann Curzan, and I'm honored to be here today as the new Dean of the College of Literature, Science, and the Arts. Thank you. I'm also a professor in the departments of English and linguistics, as well as the School of Education. And I'm very pleased to be here to present the first State of the College address of my term as dean. An important moment each year when we step back to talk about the work that we've accomplished, to get a sense to take stock of where we are as a college, and share some of our plans and goals for the future. I also, given that this is my first State of the College address, want to share with you some of my values and priorities that will inform my leadership of the college. Before I begin, I want to acknowledge that the University of Michigan is located on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people. In 1817, the Ojibwa, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations made the largest single land donation to the University of Michigan, offered ceremonially as a gift in the text of the treaty at the foot of the rapids so that their children could be educated. Through these words of acknowledgement, their contemporary and ancestral ties to the land and their contribution to the university are renewed and reaffirmed. As I start this talk, I think it's helpful for you to know what lies ahead. I've timed the talk, and it is about 32 minutes. Longer if you laugh, but please laugh anyway, only when appropriate. With a few minutes in here for you to talk with each other, and we'll get to that. And then we will have time for questions and comments at the end. We have the room until 4:30. We can stay here up until 4:30. We'll see how long we want to be here. I am deeply honored and excited to be appointed to this role at my home institution, and I really do think about LSA in Michigan as my home institution, which has fostered my own growth as a scholar, as a teacher, and as a leader. I see this as a chapter in my career to give back to the college and give back to the university. As many of you know, I'm an alum of LSA, having received my PhD in English Language and Literature in 1998, and this is my 18th year back on the faculty. I'm trained as a linguist. I study the history of the English language, and I have been doing administration alongside my scholarship and teaching for the past 15 years. Now, as a linguist, I collect random linguistic facts about the history of English and slang from students. As some of you know, when I'm teaching, I start class by asking the students to share slang words with me. Young people are the movers and shakers of language change, as they are of so many social changes, and I love spending time with and learning from students. I wanted to share one quick story and a word. In my welcome email to LSA students, which was slightly different from the email that went out to faculty and staff, I mentioned the fact that I collect slang from students. And at the very end of the message, in the last paragraph, I invited the students to email me with questions, suggestions, or new slang, if they wanted to teach me new slang. And one of them did. And I want to give props to her for reading all the way to the end of the message to see that I had, not only to see the invitation, but then to take me up on the invitation. And she wrote to see if I knew the word chonky, which describes animals that are oddly, and I think cutely, round, as captured here, although I honestly think I have seen chonkier cats. I wanted to share this word with you, partly just to shamelessly have a cute cat slide, but really as part of the delight of hanging out with young people who surround us on campus and bring such vibrancy to our professional lives. There is so much to appreciate about LSA, and I'm here to say that the state of the college is strong. As dean, I promise to be the fiercest advocate of the college and of a liberal arts education and liberal arts research. I am deeply, deeply proud of the depth and breadth of our excellence as a college. We have chosen to continue to invest across all three divisions, natural sciences, social sciences, and humanities, in a way that many of our peer institutions have not. And we are a world-class research institution that cares deeply about undergraduate and graduate education. In terms of appreciation of LSA, I want to stress the importance of people. There is actually no such thing as the college, although we talk about the college, other than the thousands of people who make up the college. Our excellence is, in the end, about people. And I am committed to trying to ensure that everyone can be their best selves in whatever role they are playing, as scholars, as learners, as teachers, as professionals, and as people. I mean it when I say, as I did in the welcome video, how deeply lucky I feel to be surrounded by remarkable faculty and staff colleagues and students. I am grateful to the outstanding people who are on my leadership team in the LSA Dean's Office, both those who are continuing and those who are new. And as part of fostering an appreciative culture, I want to tell you about 4 great interactions I've had with inspiring people in just the past few weeks. So I'm going to start with Andre Green, who is a presidential postdoc. I met Andre on a visit to ecology and evolutionary biology, and I was struck by both the scientific innovation and the beauty of the work that he is doing. Andre is working to preserve monarch butterflies and to understand their individual migration patterns. And when I visited Andre, he pulled these monarchs out from these little envelopes, and he would hold them, and their little legs would wiggle. Now, Andre, in collaboration with colleagues from the College of Engineering, are using what are called Michigan Micromote, which is the smallest computer in the world, which was created here at U of M, and have developed a tiny sensor that can be attached to a monarch butterfly without disrupting its life cycle. And this allows them to track individual monarchs as they make their migration. This is technologically sophisticated, and it is also about understanding and preserving this beautiful creature. And the team just won a National Geographic Society grant. I have to say, this work fills me with wonder and joy about what is possible. Then let me tell you about Suad Abdul Kabir. Professor Kabir is an associate professor in American culture and director of the Arab and Muslim American Studies program. I was first introduced to the website from her class a few weeks ago. This was a final project for American Culture 310, and the website is called Race and Muslims in the United States, a Primer. And on the screen, you see Dr. Kabul's picture, and on the other side, you see an image that was designed by one of the students that's on the homepage of the website. This website was collaboratively built with the students serving as writers, as editors, designers, and PR folks. And Dr. Kabir talks about how challenging it is to do this kind of collaborative work, and she wanted to give a shout out to Whitney Peoples at CRLT. I am so struck by the ways in which this final project is helping students become agents of positive change in the world through this kind of public intellectual work through a course. This is really learning taken beyond the classroom, learning that is building a community, fostering collaboration, fostering a more inclusive community as it takes this information about the complexity of the relationship between race and Muslims and makes it publicly available. And the website is being used both at the University of Michigan and at other institutions. So here we have a brilliant scholar who is a deeply committed teacher, and I'm inspired by how she's working collaboratively with students. This is brave, this is hard work to create this public resource. Then I've had many interactions over the past couple of months with Natalie Condon, who is a video content producer in LSA Advancement. I worked closely with Natalie in August as we created the welcome video and did the photo shoots. And I have to say, I am someone who does not really like having her photo taken, and so it takes a lot of cajoling for me to get through those photo shoots. And this is after working with Natalie a few years ago when I was making short videos for the college about language. Natalie is creative and brilliant at her work, yet so very modest about that brilliance. She also brings an energy to her work that radiates, and for everyone who knows her, that just radiates a sense of joy and play. And she invites the people into these projects and helps them, or us, shine in the work that she creates. She has that gift of making the people she works with feel special in terms of their contributions to a project and to the broader mission of the college. And I want to say how much I appreciate how Natalie's work as a video content producer contributes both to the mission of the college and also to the positive culture in her team. And then I want to introduce you to Audrey Funwe. So Audrey is a junior majoring in cognitive science. She's from Farmington Hills, and her family immigrated to the United States from Cameroon when she was 7. I met Audrey when she participated on a panel of Kessler Presidential Scholars last month. All of these scholars are first-generation students from low-income families. Audrey is fascinated by how the brain works and loves that she is taking courses in philosophy and linguistics alongside science courses as part of her major. Now, she grew up with a father who wanted his children to go into science and become doctors, engineers, or in her case, a pharmacist, because he said that is how you succeed. And Audrey just lights up talking about her studies, and on the panel, she shared, and she's given me permission to share this here, that when she talks with her father, even though she is taking lots of science courses, she tells him only about the courses she is taking in the arts and humanities, literature, and history. And she does this because she is trying to convince him of the value of a broad liberal arts education. And she talks about this as a way of paving the way for her 3 younger siblings. And she's trying to ensure that they can study whatever they are passionate about when they go to college. I'm truly inspired by her courage, her grit, and passion. This is a young woman who is going to continue to change the world. I highlight these 4 inspiring members of our community to capture really the range of amazing work that is happening in LSA. And of course, there is so much more. And I know we have hundreds of similarly inspiring stories in this room. From the meetings that I have had over 17 years, and certainly over the last couple of months, I have seen how so many of you light up when you talk about how your work and your teams contribute to the mission of the college. Research tells us that appreciation and gratitude actually can make us happier and more effective. I've had the chance to take the last few minutes and reflect here on some of what I'm appreciative of. And I'd now actually like to take a few minutes and let you all share that with each other, so it's not just me benefiting from saying what I'm grateful for, but actually all of us getting a chance to do that. So what I'd love to do is have you turn to someone next to you, and if you're not sitting next to anyone, if you can move. And if you see someone who's not talking to anyone, if you can go introduce yourself to that person, because this is also part of creating a welcoming, inclusive culture. But to talk with someone, introduce yourself if you don't know them, and we'll take about 3 minutes, and either brag about someone, talk about what you appreciate about someone you work with, or talk about what you appreciate about your own work here for the college. So if we can just take a few minutes, meet someone, and share what you appreciate about the people or the work that you do. right, I am now going to rudely interrupt. Thank you all for participating in that, and what a joy from here to hear the room just explode in talk and laughter, and to see everyone leaning in toward each other to talk about what they appreciate and talk about the people they work with. And I'm so sorry to rudely interrupt you. But I hope that this moment will have a good impact on your day of just thinking about the purpose, what we appreciate, what we are grateful for, and the people we are grateful for. And I want you to know how much I appreciate all of you and the work that you and your teams are doing for the college. This kind of talk about appreciation is part of fostering a culture of well-being, which is a core value and priority for me. And let me take a few minutes now to tell you about some of my other core values and priorities as I begin this role. So we'll start with discovery and exploration. Discovery and exploration really are at the core of the liberal arts. And to support discovery and exploration is fundamental to supporting innovation and excellence in research and teaching. As scholars, teachers, and learners, we are committed to exploration, to intellectual risk-taking, and creative solutions that will move us forward. Community. Here I want to talk about fostering a strong, diverse community that is purposefully inclusive and equitable. And I use that phrase, purposefully inclusive and equitable, because we have to be purposeful about it. We have to be intentional. Inclusion does not just happen. Equity does not just happen. It is something that we must work on every day, all the time, and it could not be more important. This is a focus on access. It is also a focus on deep listening, on being able to talk across difference, and respect for the experiences and perspectives of others. Serving the public good is also, for me, a core value and priority. As a public institution, I take seriously our commitment to advancing the public or the common good, to pursuing work that makes this world better than we found it at the state, the national, and the global level. Purpose. This is something I've become ever more convinced about over the years. I think it is just critically important to be mindful about what motivates us, about what gives us purpose, which means that we actually must have the time and space for reflection and strategic thinking. I commit to trying to maximize the time for all of us for the work that matters. And we know that, in fact, figuring out what gives us purpose, keeping our focus trained on what motivates us and gives us purpose, can lead to more fulfilling and happier lives, both professionally and personally. And then well-being. I'm just committed to the importance of creating a culture of well-being, and this is for faculty, for staff, and for students, so that everyone here can thrive, again, as teachers, as learners, as professionals, and as people. You will hear me talking a lot over the next few years about joy and play, alongside discovery and exploration and rigor and innovation and challenge. I believe that all of these are and must be intertwined. When we put these kinds of values at the center, we can build on our excellence. And I want to emphasize the importance of a strong community to creating the conditions where people can thrive and pursue purposeful work. I also want to stress the importance of taking the time to reflect, to ask questions, and listen, as opposed to just chasing the to-do list or chasing the ever-elusive zero inbox, which I completely empathize with because I'm always after that. But it does mean that we don't always have the space to do that kind of real reflection and strategic thinking that we need to do, that time for the challenging questions and listening and sustained thinking that leads to creativity and innovation. And I'm stressing creativity and innovation and the ingredients for them because they are what have built and sustained LSA's excellence throughout its history. I want to take a moment to celebrate some of the achievements in recent years as part of doing the State of the College, where we have thought big, just the kinds of achievements we want to continue to encourage and make possible. Now, there's a long list of achievements I could talk about here, and I wish I could, but I won't. And I've chosen a few that contribute fundamentally to our excellence, support people in doing their best work, and contribute to our core values. And I've put these into 3 categories, these moments where we have thought boldly: student support, new programs, and new spaces. So we'll start with students, and I want to start by highlighting the laptop program. So it's important to remember that the inspiration for the laptop program came from students, and specifically students participating in the #BBUM movement. What we have been doing is providing a laptop for the duration of students' college careers if they need one, and then they have the option to purchase it very cheaply at graduation. This program has been going for 4 years. 581 laptops were distributed this year, and about 2,100 laptops have been distributed total. The first class of recipients has graduated, and we know from talking with them how much this program has mattered to their careers here, both in terms of doing their academic work, but also in terms of feeling welcome and included in this community. I'm very proud that this program has actually now been adopted by the provost, and the fact that we created this in LSA as we were the home of this program. Next, I want to talk about the Kessler Presidential Scholars Program. As I mentioned when I was talking about Audrey, this is a program that supports first-generation, low-income students, and it's based on a cohort model. And it has already, and we're really proud of this, become a national model for creating this kind of scholarship program. We know that this population of students faces obstacles that tuition dollars alone will not solve. The Kessler program is about scholarship funding, but it's also about creating a strong community for students and one-on-one, what we're calling wraparound support over students' entire career at the University of Michigan. And while nationally, first-generation student completion rate is about 40%, which is really just heartbreaking, the Kessler scholars, if we look at the 6-year completion rate, are at over 90%. And I'm really proud of that program. And then, again, there are so many things I could highlight, but I want to highlight the Comprehensive Studies program. This is really a gem in our network of student support, whose roots go back over 40 years and is also born from student activism, specifically Black student demands in 1968 as part of the first Black Action Movement strike. CSP now serves over 2,700 undergraduates with small classes, dedicated advisors, and talented instructors across multiple disciplines. And I have to say, 2019, both advisors and teachers in CSP won multiple awards. This past summer, CSP welcomed 271 Summer Bridge scholars who participated in a revised curriculum that allowed these scholars to hone critical analytic skills, especially in the areas of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and to earn social science, humanities, and race and ethnicity credit in the summer. For the 2019-20 academic year, CSP has welcomed 650 new students, including 70 transfer students, and it is a key support system for students to thrive here. So, yes, I'm delighted to. Let me now highlight 3 academic programs. One is, well, I'm going to talk about 2 of them together, QMSS, which is Quantitative Methods in Social Science, and the new Digital Studies Institute. We live in an era of big data and the digital, and LSA scholars are leaders in this research space. We're focused on how to understand data, how to analyze it rigorously, and how to use it ethically. We are also trying to understand what it means for us to live in this digital world and how it affects our identities, our social relationships, and social inequalities and discrimination. Because of who we are as a research institution, we can include students in this research endeavor. And we have 2 minors, one in QMSS, which we're just starting, and one in digital studies. And students also have the opportunity to be involved in research in this area. I also want to highlight the Collegiate Fellows Program. And here you see the pictures of our new cohort of collegiate fellows for this year. This is a hiring program that is part of our DEI strategic plan. We've hired 25 fellows in the past 3 years. We've recruited fellows in all 3 divisions, natural science, social science, and humanities. These are rising stars in their fields with demonstrated commitment to DEI. Members of the first cohort have now moved on to the tenure track this fall, and they are already innovating, and all of these fellows are innovating and diversifying the perspectives that drive the research programs, the curriculum, and the community conversations that we're having in LSA. And now let me talk about 2 spaces. So the first, as you can guess from the picture, is the Museum of Natural History. And if you have not been over to this space yet, I hope you will go right after this talk, or as soon as you get off work. It is just beautiful. It is a space, for me, it's a space for exploration that encourages exploration. And just so you know, we have passed 100,000 in attendance in just 5 months. That is nearly 50% more than all of 2017. We had a record number of school group bookings, and I just love that in terms of thinking about our public mission and what it means to be bringing students into this space as part of their learning. We have the second opening is coming this fall with 3 more major exhibits and 2 public labs. And then there is the LSA edition. And I am watching this edition every day out my window because my window overlooks the biggest part of the construction site, the big glass box being built off the back of LSA. This is going to open in January, and we really hope that this is going to be a home for LSA undergraduates. Here they're going to be able to find services including the LSA Opportunity Hub. They're going to be able to find LSA Student Government, Optimize, a transfer student center, scholarships, and more. I have to say, I can hardly wait until the LSA building is humming with students. And I've had some people say, given where my office is and my window overlooks this very big space, and they say, aren't you worried that it's going to get noisy? And my response is, I hope so. And I really mean that if my office, if the background noise in my office is undergraduates talking with each other and doing work and socializing, that would be the most wonderful noise to have in the background. Now, obviously, much of what I've described is ongoing work. Looking ahead, there are some things that I know we will be working on in the coming year, and so I wanted to share those with you. The first is thinking about research impact. LSA faculty are pursuing research with important implications for some of the states, the nations, and the world's most challenging issues. Everything from sustainability and climate change to mass incarceration, race relations, ethics and inequality in the new digital world. We are also doing the work that allows us to write better histories to understand our past, exploring the universe to understand our place within it, and creating the art that helps us understand the human experience. This morning, if any of you were able to be at the DEI Summit, Van Jones was talking about the fact that as we move into this new world that we're in, the superpower is to have the ability to navigate and succeed in a radically diverse society, and to be able to learn about difference. You have to know how to learn about difference, to find shared ground and shared purpose in order to be able to come up with solutions where we can make a difference, to be able to find that shared ground and shared purpose across difference. And I have to say, I think that LSA is integral to this mission as part of what we do, our research and our teaching. As President Schlissel has said, some of the world's biggest problems are very human problems. And this is why the research and teaching happening here in LSA across all the liberal arts has so much to offer. I'm excited to continue to work with faculty colleagues to determine where and how we want to continue to use the power of this university, of the University of Michigan, and the interdisciplinary collaborations we can pursue here to be an even more public presence in pursuing positive change. We will be doing continue to do work on diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're in year 4 of our strategic plan, and we'll be rigorously assessing what we have achieved and where to focus our efforts moving forward, including developing strategies for the next chapter after the 5-year plan. And this is really important work that we need to be doing. This is a time when we must remain focused on affordability and access, on ensuring that learning environments are equitable and free from harassment and discrimination, on creating a community that is as diverse as this country and is inclusive and welcoming for all, including international scholars and students, on fostering the spaces where we can engage in the hardest conversations with genuine curiosity in learning from the perspectives of others, perspectives different from our own. I really hope and know that we can be a model for what it means to engage rigorously and respectfully in civic discourse. And then I know we will be doing some work in undergraduate education. Tim McKay, who is the new Associate Dean for Undergraduate Education, and I will be mapping out a plan for some innovative changes in this space. This work is coming in part out of the work that the Task Force on the Future of Undergraduate Education in the University of Michigan's Third Century did over the past 2 years, and I co-chaired that task force with Mark Moldwin in the College of Engineering. The report that we created put 6 core values at the center of undergraduate education. And those values, and you're going to hear some echoes here, are bold exploration, the common good, purposeful inclusion, collaborative spirit, well-being, and self-determination. LSA and the University of Michigan more broadly are poised to lead, I think, really boldly in exploring how to structure undergraduate education to help all students take advantage of being at a leading research institution, to make sure students have the opportunity to find mentors, because we know that those mentoring relationships for students are vitally important, that they have the opportunity to reflect on their learning and to help them pursue work that gives them purpose, both at the University of Michigan and far beyond. It is in this context of our accomplishments and our upcoming work that I want to review with you briefly some information about the budget. I see budgets, honestly, as fundamentally about priorities. And in that way, budgets are as much philosophical as they are financial. So we're going to review, I have 3 budget slides here. And we will start with LSA operating revenue. And you'll see at the top that the total revenue is, from the fiscal year 19, $884 million. That's going to be important. Keep track of that number. It's going to be important later. And you'll also see that of that revenue, over 80% is from the general fund. And we'll return to the general fund because that's, of course, a big undifferentiated slice of the pie. With 10% from sponsored research, another 6% for gifts. And I think, as I think about what does this represent, it represents the importance of students, the importance of research and grants, as well as of our loyal donors, both big and small. Now, if we dig into the general fund, here we've broken down the general fund budget, because I think this is important to see, which is that over 75% of the general fund budget is from undergraduate tuition and fees. And it does highlight, I think for all of us, the centrality of our undergraduate mission, our responsibility to ensure that we are prioritizing initiatives and programs that support undergraduates getting the best possible education at a world-class research institution. And it is also our responsibility to ensure that these dollars are used with the utmost integrity. So then we will look at operating expenses. And I had asked you to retain that 884, because if you look at the top of this, you will see that our operating expenses are $864 million. That's how you'd want to see this, which means that our revenue is just above our operating expenses. Over half our expenses, if you look at this chart, you will see that over half of our expenses are about people, as they should be. They are supporting people, faculty, staff, and financial aid for students. You will also see, what had just happened there? You will also see that part of this, 10%, is taxes, which are going to the provost's office. And I do believe that we should be, taxes are really important to the health of the university, and LSA we pay our fair share of the taxes to make sure we're contributing to the university. And you will see that part of this expense is support of facilities, which is supporting our research and our teaching mission. So with the budget, let me just talk briefly about what lies ahead. As for the past couple of years, some of you may have been hearing about something called the fiscal cliff. Yes? Now, fiscal cliff sounds terrifying. And I would like to say it's not, well, A, it's a metaphor, but it's also, even as a metaphor, it's not really a cliff. It's more like a plateau and some step downs. And the step downs are in terms of current revenue streams. It's also something that we've known about and been able to plan for. Here's the situation. As you know, funding from the state of Michigan went through a very long period of decline, funding for us at the university. The state budget for this year was just released, and the University of Michigan received about $223 million, which is less than we received 10 years ago during the Great Recession. So the university has been doing, as you all know, a number of things to increase revenue and cut costs. For example, we've been admitting more out-of-state students because the in-state population of students is declining and there's high demand from out-of-state students. We've also cut costs with energy savings and the university's shared services center and other strategies. These have worked, and some of them will continue to lower costs, but some of them are tapped out. For instance, the residency shift for undergraduate students will be completed in fiscal year 22. We now have 49% out-of-state enrollment, and the university is going to hold there. And we do not want to cut costs in ways that harm core mission work within the college. Now, the university is already working hard to adjust. For instance, we might increase summer capacity. We've increased our fundraising. Some schools are already exploring online degree programs. The point is that this is not a moment where we need to feel under threat in terms of our budget. But it is a moment where we need to be thoughtful and strategic. So this academic year, we will undertake a process of strategic planning. This is about articulating our vision, our mission, and our values as a college. It's an opportunity, I hope, for us to come together as a community and think through with each other our shared priorities. I'm actually, and this may be very geeky, I'm very excited about this process. It's been a long time since we tried to do this as a college. We've had teams and groups do that within the college, but to try to do it as a whole college. And I think it matters for our community and for our mission, both within the university and far beyond it. Now, a couple of weeks ago, as I was talking about strategic planning, a department chair said to me, "Anne, is that just your euphemism for budget cutting?" Which I was sort of glad that this person said to me. And the answer is no. It's about vision, mission, and values and priorities. Doing this work together now means that in the future, if and when we do need to make some harder decisions about where to invest, we can make sure we're doing what matters most, aligning our decisions with our mission, our vision, and our priorities in a way that feels as transparent as possible to the community. I have to say, I also see strategic planning as critically important work at this historical moment. We need to advocate for who we are and why what we do matters, both to our colleagues across the university and within the national discourse. There are social, economic, and political forces at work that don't consistently value a broad liberal arts education and liberal arts research. If you look at our current mission statement as a college, it echoes the university's, and there is much to admire about the university's mission statement. But I know that we all believe that LSA plays a unique role at the university in terms of the education we provide to create tomorrow's leaders and in terms of the research that we do to create positive change in the world. This is our chance to own that ground. We don't want to let others make the narrative for us. We should control our own narrative, what we do, what our values and priorities are, and where we are headed. I'm excited to work with all of you on this project, and you'll be hearing more in the weeks to come as we start to invite participation from the community. I want to emphasize that each of your perspectives matters as we do this work. And with that point, it brings me back to my guiding principle, which is that in the end, it is all about people. This is actually a quote from my grandfather, John Hannah. If you come to my office, and that is an open invitation, and I hope people will come to my office, you can also see what's happening in the LSA edition from my office, you will see a photo of my grandfather. It's the one on the right where he is on the Great Wall. It's on my bookshelf, and it matters to me to see him every day and remember this principle which guided his work. John Hannah was from Grand Rapids. He was born in 1902, and he grew up on a farm in Grand Rapids. He was a chicken farmer. That was his primary responsibility. He spent 2 years at Grand Rapids Junior College, 1 year at the University of Michigan, and then he graduated from Michigan Agricultural College in 1923. And some of you will know that Michigan Agricultural College became Michigan State. He spent 10 years as an extension specialist for the college in poultry husbandry. He subsequently returned to MSU as secretary of the college. He was working closely with the president, and he also happened to marry the president's daughter. And then he succeeded the president in 1941. And John Hannah was president of Michigan State for the next 28 years. He was known on campus as Uncle John. He took the door off his office so that people would feel free to stop by. And he signed every single diploma, even as Michigan State grew to the size, close to the size it is now, he signed every single diploma by hand. He is and remains a model for me about what it means to recognize every person in the college for their unique and important contribution to the mission of this place. So please know that my door is always metaphorically open. It is not always physically open, but it is metaphorically open. I am truly honored to be working with all of you. I can promise you that I will work very, very hard for this college. I take the responsibility of being the college's dean with the utmost seriousness. I will aim to uphold the highest standards of ethics and integrity for the college. I also know that the best ideas come from everywhere. And I'm excited to listen and learn from all of you in the years to come across the breadth of this college. The state of the college is fundamentally about us doing our work together in a healthy, sustainable, purposeful, joyful way to advance the mission of this remarkable college. I truly appreciate all of you coming today. We now have some time for conversation, and I welcome your questions, your comments, and I'd love to hear what is resonating for you, as well as what matters for you as we think about the state of the college. So thank you all for coming. So we have time. And Merlis has a microphone.
Yes, I'm very excited about this.
Oh, great.
Hi. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about your thoughts, your thinking around undergraduate education and undergraduate learning.
Sure. Thank you for the question. And actually, can we have you introduce yourself? If we bring the mic back.
My name's Anna Backey. I work for LSA Advancement.
Thanks. So have lots of thoughts about undergraduate education and look forward to working with Tim McKay, who's also been doing a lot of work in this space, both around the broad value of a liberal arts education and then also specifically about equity and inclusion in STEM. But for me, some of this comes out of co-chairing the task force for the last 2 years, for the provost, which was called, it really was called, The Future of Undergraduate Education at the University of Michigan in the Third Century. And he said, Anne, will you co-chair that? And I said, yes. And it was across the entire university, so all the schools and colleges who are thinking about undergraduate education. And what we started with, we spent the first 6 months coming up with those core values. And the reason we did that was the way I'm hoping it will work for the college. We wanted those as a touch point to keep coming back to. So once we had those core values, we started, and we did that through a lot of participation from students and staff and faculty across the university, was to then say, okay, then if you look at our practices, what does not align? And that was really interesting work, I have to say. So if you take the first one, bold exploration, and when we ask students and faculty, what is at the core, what is the purpose of an education? What came out, if you did a word cloud, more than anything was discovery, exploration, and part of that was risk-taking. So we want students to be able to explore, to take risks. And then you look at some of our practices, which are things like rewarding 4.0 students at the end of 4 years. Now, it's kind of scary to take a risk if you're worried that your GPA is going to get tanked from that risk. So we started to think about, okay, where would you need to be looking at alignment? Thinking about things like purposeful inclusion, so diversity, equity, and inclusion. Again, if we just think about that first year, we know that for students who are first-generation students, students coming from under-resourced schools, that first year can be really hard. It can be very hard. And for the way we do things now, if you struggle that first year and you maybe have some classes that don't go well, you have that with you for the rest of your career. And so when we think about equity and access and you look at some of our practices, you think there may be some bold changes we might want to make in this space. Or well-being. We heard a lot from students about well-being. They were so reflective and smart about it. They were saying, our anxiety about grades is getting in the way of learning. And I was so struck by that. I mean, they were just like, my concern about how well I do on that test means that I actually know what I would need to do to learn, and I don't do that because I just need to get through this test or get through this paper. So the task force came up with some pretty bold ideas, and we'll be figuring out where we want to start to do some pilots in LSA. I'll give you one other example, which is the core value of self-determination. This idea of being able to reflect on how you learn, what you're learning, how you respond to failure, right? These ideas of perseverance and grit. We need to make more space for those in the curriculum. We need to figure out how do you embed those in the curriculum so that students are learning in their classes and learning in their extracurricular and co-curricular spaces. Because when you ask students where are the most formative learning experiences, they are often not in classrooms. They're in other spaces. So how do we create more space for reflection so students can synthesize the learning they're doing in their classes, in these extracurricular and co-curricular spaces, and have time for guided reflection on when they fail, what have they learned from that? How are they going to take that forward? And it's not enough to assume that students are going to do that in their spare time. So I'm excited to think about how we'll integrate some of that. So we'll start to map out how we're going to pilot some changes to create changes in curriculum. How do we encourage more inclusive teaching practices? I'm really excited about the work. And I have to say, I just think Michigan and LSA should lead on this. That I think there are a lot of schools that would like to be rethinking some of these things, and I feel like a lot of people are waiting for someone to lead, and I think it should be us.
So it was a really great talk. I'm
sorry,
here.
Where are you?
Here.
I honestly cannot see.
Oh, you want to stand up?
Hello.
Hi. I'm Deborah Dash Moore. You articulated 3 different constituencies. You left out one, and I find in my teaching that this other constituency is increasingly important, and I'm talking about parents. I have kids. I had a student just before I came over here saying, I'm reading this, and I shared with my mother about, and this is pretty typical. So it's not like I'm just teaching the student, but I'm also engaged in teaching parents, and, or indirectly. So where do parents fit into your thinking about your leadership?
Thank you. What a great question. And it is, I think about parents in a few different ways. So one is, there's the kind of joyful part of we're teaching things and we know students are sometimes telling their parents about what they're learning. So there's an education that is spreading beyond that. And also, we also know that they're often talking to their peers, which I think is fun. But the first thing that jumps to mind of the way I'm thinking about parents, and this gets back to making the case for a liberal arts education. So I think about the national discourse we're in, and the ways in which a liberal arts education is often not valued, and the fact that our students, LSA students who want to get a broad liberal arts education, are sometimes running into some real resistance from their families about whether or not this is a good education to get. And I can think about Audrey here and lots of our students. And I think it's also true for students who are first-generation students, that to say, I'm going to major in, and I feel bad, I was picking out a department here, so I'm going to pick out a few. Classical studies, anthropology, sociology, history of art, chemistry, and the parents are like, what are you going to do with that? And I think we haven't always equipped students with the answer to that question. And I will say I'm a professor of English, so I will just own this, because we are one of the majors that often gets mentioned in this conversation about, like, what are you going to do with that degree? And I'm also a linguist, and that doesn't get any better over there. And in most of my career, when students say, you know, my parents want to know, or I want to know, what can I do with this degree? What we've often said is, trust us, you'll get a job. Right? Because we know that actually LSA graduates get great jobs. And the student says, what kind of job? And I'm like, a good job. Because of course, in some ways, the faculty are the wrong people to ask about that. And so, and that's not a good, like, trust us is not a good model of that, and there's good reason that the students and their families and communities might not trust us about what you're going to do with that education. And it's one of the reasons that I'm really very excited about the LSA Opportunity Hub, because I think that the Opportunity Hub is one of the things that is really has the potential to bolster a broad liberal arts education, because the idea of the Opportunity Hub is to help students across the liberal arts think about, what are my goals and aspirations while I'm here and after I leave here? And we very consciously, when we created this, and I've been in on the ground floor on this, did not call it the LSA Career Hub. We called it the LSA Opportunity Hub, because the idea was, what opportunities do you want while you're here and after you leave here? What are your goals and aspirations? And helping students, whatever their major is, see where do those classical studies, history of art, anthropology, sociology, English, linguistics majors, where do they go? Let's connect you to mentors, alumni mentors who've taken those degrees and taken them places. What kind of internships do you want? We can help pay for those if they're low-paid or unpaid internships. And we can hook you up with employers, do professional development. And my hope is that by doing this, it really does allow our students to major in what they love, because we know that you get the best education when you are studying things that you're actually interested in, and make the case to their families. So this is one of the ways I'm really thinking about parents, their families, their communities, about what they are going to do with this education, and do it in a way that will be persuasive both for them and for their families. So I have other thoughts, but that's one of the ways that jumps to mind of how I'm thinking about families. And I'm also, I'll add one other thought. I talked to some parents on Friday afternoon at a reception, because it was Parents' Weekend, and found that at the end of my remarks, I was trying to provide some perspective for them about giving space to their students, to their children, to explore. Right? If we believe in exploration as part of this, to say to parents, when your child comes to you and says, I might change my major, or I'm not sure anymore, to give them that space. So that was one hope. And another was to help students, to have families help support students as they try to find mentors on campus. Because again, we know those mentoring relationships are just critical. And I think if students can be hearing from all sides about how important it is to establish those kinds of relationships with faculty, with advisors, with other educational advising staff across the college, that I think is really important.
Hi, Adam Eichmeyer with the Health Sciences Scholars Program, one of the Michigan Learning Communities. My first semester teaching at Michigan after going to undergrad and grad school here was fall of 2016. And a lot of things happened that semester, if you remember, and a lot of students were hurt and confused, and a lot of faculty were confused as to how to deal with everything and how to make sure that our students, no matter what they thought, felt heard and felt valued. And I'm just curious because I teach about the politics of healthcare, so I've been thinking about this a lot. What are your thoughts on how we as a college can do better this time around for our students?
That's a great question and a hard question, and I'll share a couple thoughts, but it's something we're going to need to continue to work on. And in some ways, I think I was trying to get at it in some of these comments here. I honestly think that the work that we do in LSA is critical to the education you need to be able to participate in conversations with people whose perspectives are not yours. Because I actually think that this is one of the hardest things you can do. And again, I think about what Van Jones was talking about this morning, about that the key skill, the superpower at this point, is to be able to succeed, to be able to work effectively in a radically diverse society and world. And that means being able to talk across difference. So now I will just climb up on my soapbox and then I'll climb back down. But people sometimes talk about these abilities to dialogue, to communicate as soft skills. This is one of my least favorite expressions because soft skills can be read, I don't think people try to mean it this way, but it can be read as if those are somehow easier or less challenging than other kinds of analytic skills or scientific technical skills. And I gotta say, the ability to understand and listen to perspectives that are not your own is one of the hardest things that one can ever learn to do. It is incredibly challenging. And one of my favorite quotes from a fellow dean is, empathy is not just a value, it's a skill. And this is something that we work hard on in LSA. This is part of an LSA education, which is learning about history and other cultures and ethics and trying to get a perspective, and really in some ways, I mean, I think of science sometimes as studying the human, understanding the role of the human experience within the world, and getting that perspective and trying to learn to be able to listen deeply to others, respect that their perspectives are not your own, and then, and one of the words that I use in this is to be curious, to understand others. That actually that is a key thing, and I think it's something we encourage across the college, which is what does it mean to be curious? What does it mean to ask good questions? What does it mean to collect the data? And that data can just come from another person that you're talking to be able to start to answer those questions. So this is something I will certainly be talking about. We will be, as we try to think about how to support instructors in doing inclusive teaching and creating that in their classrooms. Last week I met with the student group We Listen. And I know there's also a staff, We Listen, which is a group really trying to foster exactly that kind of conversation on campus and how we can partner with them when we're doing events on campus to be able to foster conversation. We're going to need to keep practicing this, and part of that is going to be being able to talk about it and talk about the importance and value the importance of having those conversations. Yeah, I see a question.
Hi, Sally Uwe, Department of Astronomy. I think what you just said is incredibly important. I think that right now we have some very, very urgent work to do, especially across the board, also in terms of the war on truth, right? I mean, we have to do something to address the fake news crisis, and here in LSA is exactly where that happens, right? We are the keepers of how knowledge is learned and generated. So what are we going to do about this? I feel like we need a really organized, we really need to take this seriously.
I couldn't agree more. And I will be interested, honestly, as we do this work to think about our vision, our mission, and our values. I think this is going to be really critical part of our mission and our values is what is our role as both a liberal arts college and also as a university to be, as we say, the creators, preservers, and we sort of spread knowledge. Like, this is what we do. And one of the, so there's work that we will want to do as a college when we think about, okay, if that is core to our mission, which I think it is, and we'll figure out exactly what that means together, what work do we do to support that? What are our priorities? What are our strategies to be able to do that work? And I certainly can tell you that I see my role as the dean of the college is to be one of the fiercest advocates for this in the public sphere. And I actually think that a big part of my job is within the college and really trying to make sure we can do our work and everyone feels supported to do their best work in the college. Another part of my job is to try to participate in this public discourse and make sure that everyone in the college who wants to participate in that public discourse can also participate in that public discourse so that our voices are heard. Because we need to show why this research and why this education matters. And so we need to be out there sharing that, and sharing it in a way that people can hear. And I have to say, I think that is incredibly important. This is not a time where we get to just talk to ourselves. This is also a time where we have to think about how do we make this case to people who are outside the academy. And that's just, to me, core mission work. Oh.
Hi. I first want to just express enthusiasm. I know I'm not alone in saying how excited we were to hear the news that you would be at the helm. I haven't heard anything but enthusiasm, so I'm really excited about that. Something I sometimes struggle with and want to get your take on, and asking this sort of in solidarity and in a spirit of problem solving, is when we talking about difference, something that can be challenging is, are there any values or differences as a college that we want to say, or as staff that we want to say we don't really accept? So, sorry, and this gets kind of, I don't know, my heart races talking about it because it feels uncomfortable, but something like, if the difference is, as the child of immigrants, you don't believe that me and my family should be here. Philosophically, in a course, for example, under the guidance of faculty, I could see like philosophically discussing that in principle, but I wonder if there are any spaces in the college where we do want to affirm and say some values or differences maybe we're willing to hear but not willing to welcome. Does that make sense?
Thank you for standing up and sharing that, and I agree. It's a conversation we're going to need to keep having, and I think that the distinction you made there at the end is a really important one of things that we're going to hear and engage with, but as to whether they're welcomed or accepted, that may be different. And I'm thinking about Derek Black, I think, is his name. He was a white nationalist. If someone can nod that I have his name right, I think I heard him interviewed on Terry Gross, I think, last week. A young man whose father, website, a white nationalist website. Stormfront, thank you. See, this is going to be collaborative. We're going to do this together. And he was sort of the heir apparent of Stormfront. And he went to a small liberal arts college in Florida, and some of you may have read about this. And he started to engage with people who were very not like him, including starting to go to a Shabbat dinner every Friday night. And he was someone who had said pretty much that Jews shouldn't exist, or at least not in a white nationalist state. And some of the people he was engaging with actually knew who he was and the beliefs that he held, and they continued to engage with him. And there's something very striking about that story, and he, in the end, talks about both the relationships he had in college and the courses he took. And the courses he took in the classics and in Arabic, and learning that race is constructed and that it wasn't white people who had all the great inventions in the world. And learning this as part of a liberal arts education is part of how he came to the point where he renounced white nationalism and is now out there trying to, in many ways, counter what he sees as damage that he and his had already done with some of his previous actions. And so, and I listen to that and I think, oh, what hard work for the people involved in that. And so I think this is something that we want to think about. How do we want to talk about what it means to engage in this space and what's involved in that challenge and who the burden falls on. Van Jones was talking about that this morning in terms of saying that often it is groups who are marginalized and in the minority who sort of keep taking the burden and saying, why do I have to keep educating on this? And Van Jones this morning was saying, it is not fair and it is necessary. And I think these are conversations we really are going to need to continue to have in terms of how we want to talk about this and think about this as a college. So thank you for the question.
Kayla Anderson, LSA Scholarships, Kessler Scholars Program. So my question is, as we're admitting more out-of-state students to supplement our budget, I'm kind of curious as to what your intentions are to attend to the increasing income disparity between students as a result of that.
So, again, thank you for the question. This is one where we're going to have to continue to I see this question as having a lot of parts. So we know we already have a lot of income disparity among our students, and we see it, right? So we see students who are coming here with a lot of money, a lot of connections, a lot of privilege in a range of ways. We also know that we have students on campus who are hungry. And we know that the food pantry on campus, I mean, there are a lot of students who are going there to get food and who are needing laptops and a lot of, so there are various, I mean, one is that we have to keep our eye on access and equity, and I think there's much more work that we need to do in this space around scholarship support, around wraparound scholarship support, knowing that just getting students to the university is not enough to help them succeed at the university. And that is something that we have to continue to think about, because I think we still have, many of us, not all of us, but many of us, myself included, I am sure, still have blind spots around what it would actually mean to be fully inclusive and equitable for all of our students. And so that's something we need to keep listening to students on. I'm absolutely committed. I will continue to fundraise. I will fundraise for student scholarships all day long. I cannot imagine a more important thing that I could be doing. And this will be both for in-state and out-of-state students, because we have out-of-state students who have a lot of need as well. And so really thinking about how I can be helpful in that. I think another thing that I really want to think about is what this means for inclusive teaching. Again, I feel sure I have done it in my own classrooms, and I think you have to own your own past and experiences. I've also sat in classrooms where there are discussions, and I realize that in the discussion, people are taking things for granted as if every student has experienced those things. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching some students start to check out of that classroom because they're like, that is not my experience, and this classroom does not seem to acknowledge that that wouldn't be everyone's experience in this classroom. And so really thinking about how can all of us continue to educate ourselves to be trying to create those kinds of inclusive spaces. So I think there's going to be a lot more work to do around programs that will increase access and equity, training and education that we can be doing in our community as we think about the demographics of our students and how we can make sure that everybody, and again I come back to that everybody can thrive here And that to me is that everybody can feel like they are included and welcomed and supported and can absolutely do their best work. Yes?
Hi, Sean Jackson, Technology Services. You mentioned during the strategic planning about online courses and blended courses. You didn't mention blended courses, but I'm just adding that. I'm wondering if you could talk about the potential for growth for them and how the college may help departments and staff kind of overcome the obstacles to creating them in terms of, budget, time, bandwidth, all that kind of stuff.
Tech services. And you will have noticed, some of you I'm sure noticed that when I said that, I said some schools are already pursuing online degree programs. So this is one, I'm not going to answer this sort of as the dean of this is what's going to happen, because this is really a place where we're going to need to have some conversations as a college about what are we interested in doing in this space. Michigan, as a university, has been slower to enter the online education space than many of our peer institutions. Some of the other schools and colleges are starting to enter this space in an exploratory and in some cases very exciting way. I really feel like we need to figure out where the energies and interests of the college are. I will say that it is a priority for me to make sure that whatever we do, if we go into hybrid kinds of learning, online learning, is that we feel like we are providing the best education we can in those spaces. Like that is just incredibly important to me in terms of what LSA does, is that as we think about those spaces, we are making sure that we are proud of the education that we are providing in those spaces for those students, and that it is sustainable, that it fits within people's bandwidth to be able to do. So I don't have an answer on that, but I do feel confident in saying that we need to explore it. We need to openly, rigorously explore what we want to do in this space and make a very intentional decision for now, and then potentially in the short term, and then in the longer term.
Hello, Brittany Smith, LSA Advancement. You mentioned during your address all of the different spaces and new buildings that we have at LSA, the BSB, the Natural History Museum, the LSA building underway. So what else were you thinking in terms of other renovations at LSA?
Well, we have, and I am aware that the campus is always under construction. I'm highly aware of that. And we have to be, because if you're not, I mean, we're always already falling behind in terms of maintenance and building of buildings. So there are a couple of buildings that are squarely on our radar, and that we're talking with the university about what it would mean to renovate. So the first one, and I know there are some people in the room who will be happy to hear about this, is MLB. So much as we all love MLB, it is perhaps not our most cutting-edge building. And both in terms of the learning spaces in the MLB and in the office department spaces in MLB. So we are thinking about what it would mean to create a new building for language departments, some of our language departments, bringing them together. So we're thinking about that. Another building that is squarely on our radar that we're also in conversation about is the Chem building. But this is one that we, as a college, we started doing a strategic capital project plan a couple of years ago, and it got stopped in the dean transition, and we will actually finish that so that we can really have a long-term plan about what we need to do about spaces and be thinking strategically about what do we want to do first, what do we want to do after that, to really be thinking strategically both about renovating spaces and about new spaces. And I can tell you, many of you know we're building a new classroom building off of Ruthven, so that as the university administration moves into Ruthven, there will be I think it's right now called the Cross-Campus Classroom Building, which is getting built over there. And we're working hard to make sure that that will be a space where we can have lots of LSA classes and will really be a support for LSA teaching and learning. Okay, great.
Hi, Ann. Cindy Borland, Academic Auditing. You've mentioned a couple times your value of play. Can you talk a little bit more about how you see that playing out, maybe among the wonderful staff that you have here?
Thank you for that. And so I have ideas, and then part of it is I want to open up the space for everybody else to have ideas and to create a culture where we are willing to use words like joy and play. Because I worry, and this is coming from my experience as a faculty member, that sometimes I think people will feel like if we say words like fun and joy and play, it seems like we're not serious about our work. And in fact, I think you can and should be really serious about your work, and also it can be really joyful and fun and playful all at the same time. And in fact, many of the best ideas come out of play. Play with ideas when teams are together. And sometimes we do even use the word play for that. So I think it can take all kinds of forms. So one is I am already thinking about and think a lot about how we structure meetings and collaborative time. And I'm doing a couple of things. So one thing that is, and it's a little bit what we did here, is thinking about how can I start meetings in a way that might give people moments for gratitude or appreciation at the beginning of a meeting, or moments of play. As well as during a meeting, can we actually come at an issue in a more playful way that might be more engaging, more generative, help people be creative as part of that process. Then there's also just play. And I have to say, it is hilarious to me that the very first picture of me in the Daily is of me throwing a beanbag. I have gotten a lot of comments about my form in my beanbag throwing. And then someone said to me, "Did you let the students win?" And I thought, are you kidding me? Like, I have these young people playing against a middle-aged woman? Game on! And actually, that pop-up event that we did in September for students was very intentional on my part to say, I want to meet students and I want to do it in a really playful way. Because, and as some of you may know, on the second floor of the dean's office, I think once a month we have a lunch with board games, which is a time where people are just creating community and socializing and having a good time. And that matters. That matters to creating a community. It matters to having a space that people want to work in and come to work. So I think about play both in terms of infusing it and recognizing its infusion into our work, and play as part of our work spaces. And I was talking with the chief administrators a couple of weeks ago, and what I loved was, of course, immediately they said, okay, we're on it. We're going to think about how we might integrate this into departments, and I hope everyone will be thinking about that as part of our culture within the college, is that we can be innovative and rigorous and challenging, and this is also a place where we can have a good time, and that it doesn't mean we don't take the serious issues seriously, but we also take well-being and positive culture really seriously too. All right, should we take one more?
Hi, I'm Kai Mason. I'm with LSA Advancement. My question is about climate change, actually. So I would say the current and future students in LSA are students who've been told practically their whole lives now that we're heading straight into like global climate destabilization. And even looking past like our war on truth, and I mean, we have scientists at Michigan and LSA who are saying that this is a true thing. We have students like leaving school and leaving their classrooms to protest. And still the general response from adults and people in power has been, wow, that's great that you're protesting. You guys are the future, and like good luck taking care of this yourselves when you're older. So My question is, does LSA, or is LSA thinking of a response that's maybe a little bit more encouraging or actionable than that?
So I think we should and we need to. Again, this morning, this came up right at the end of the panel that Van Jones was on this morning, where an LSA student was talking about climate change, and she's been an activist and been working on this, and talking about the ways in which the adults, and I'm putting that as scare quotes because undergraduates are adults, but the people who are in the administration and elsewhere weren't listening hard enough. And she said, I think, pretty much, you all listen when convenient, which I thought was a very powerful thing to say, and that climate change and the very loud voices we're hearing from young people on climate change, we absolutely have to listen. It is their future, and the call that they are making is one that we have to pay attention to. And I love it that they are yelling on this to get our attention and say this is incredibly important. So LSA is, one part of the answer, but it's not the answer to the question you asked, is we are taking seriously sustainability in terms of how we build and the energy savings that we're doing, and that's incredibly important. But I know that Chris Polson, who is here, the Associate Dean for Natural Science, and I are both really committed to trying to think about how does LSA, alongside the university, we know that the carbon neutrality, the Commission on Carbon Neutrality for the president, but how can LSA partner with that? How can we be driving forward as well in terms of what we can do in terms of research? We're doing incredibly important research here, but also in terms of using all the other resources at our disposal to be thinking about how do we problem solve this, not just in terms of the science, but also in terms of how we get people to hear this, how we think about what this, one of the things we do well is think about how discourses work. So what is happening in this space? How does one productively intervene in this space, if that's what we want to do? So to sort of take all the resources at our disposal and think about how we can create positive change for climate and sustainability, and it is some of the most important work that we could be doing. So on that note, thank you all for being here, for staying, and thank you for all you do.